Welcome. Today we are going through it's going to be a great episode because we're here with Chris Pesek from Pesek Properties in Dripping Springs, Texas. And Texas is, of course, the Barndominium capital of the world, it feels like, right?
That's
So
right.
here we are. We got
That's
Chris
right.
with us. And the great thing we've got today is Chris sharing about the top problems you can have when selling a barndominium. So if you're thinking of building a barndominium, this is where you want to have Chris uh, guiding you so that you're thinking about all the things that, in advance while you're building, in case selling down the road is something that you're really concerned with. Because we were talking a lot about building barndominiums, but that resale, this is a home for investment. This
That's
could be
right.
a big chunk of money. So welcome, Chris, and thank you for being one of our guest experts inside of the Project Barndo panel of all great things about barndominiums.
John, I appreciate it, man. And yeah, you nailed it. You definitely have to think ahead, when you're building any house. It doesn't matter. I think I'm going to die in this house, but who knows what's going to happen in 5 years. I may have to sell it. So, starting with that end product in mind or possibility is huge, huge.
Right. Yeah. So as we kind of kick off, what do you think? Where should people start to focus on whether they're building or getting ready to sell a barndominium? What's some of the things they need to start thinking about?
And I go back and I think about this, and I think about some of the prior deals that I've done. And again, not only in barndominium construction, but also just general residential construction, and things that derail deals or things that end up taking money out of sellers' pockets. In the long run, they think their appreciation is one thing, but they screw up a couple of things. I mean, if you want me to just jump into number one here
Yeah,
and kind of roll
let's
from
jump right
there.
in. Yep.
All right, and I got to refer back to my notes, but and this comes from personal experience with barndominium. Make sure that when you're doing this, you do this up to your local codes and standards, and you make sure that your builder is pulling permits for these things. I had a deal go sideways and ended up costing a seller about $30,000 or $40,000 because they didn't get the proper septic permits pulled. So when you're starting this thing, a lot of people are like, oh, it's a barndominium. It's not really a house. It's kind of a barn. But trust me, the government entities that oversee all of this stuff, this is a house. And when you've got septic and you've got wells and you've got things like that, you've got to make sure that it's done correctly. And quite frankly, the construction on barndos is changing now. I don't want to say that the builders now are more reputable. That kind of puts a bad eye on builders that have built them maybe 10 years ago. Those guys are reputable. But if they were out away from municipalities and out kind of, call it West Texas or something like that, a lot of times they were like, I'm just going to put a septic tank in and a well, and I'll build a barndo here. And that's exactly the situation that popped up for me. And again, if your permits aren't done right, you may end up demoing a septic or pulling it out and replacing it and doing things like that, which is what happens. So number one, make sure that you're building it the way the government entities want you to build it.
That is such great advice, because in our barndominium community, we have so many people that are do-it-yourselfers, or maybe even they're acting as their own general, and they've got family that does that for a living, and they're like, oh, hey, I'm okay coming over there, and Uncle Fred's going to put in the tank and the drain field for you on the side, and not even worry about it if the inspections aren't necessarily available or required. But then all of a sudden,
Right.
things change, right, too, because all of a sudden you can have a municipality start to develop 5-10 years from now, and
Right.
maybe not have problems today, but have problems in the future too. So
Right.
that's
And
great.
I've also seen in general construction, somebody's dad was a master electrician and was a master electrician for 40 years. And they came in and did all the electrical work. Well, none of that stuff passed code because they hadn't been an electrician for the last 15 years, and the codes had been rewritten twice. So they weren't up to date on the codes. They did everything correctly from like when they were doing the electrician work, but it hadn't been updated with the new codes. And so when they went in to get their final inspections and COOs and stuff like that, they had to bring in another electrician. And again, they spent probably another $15,000 before they could even move into the house, because the electric work was done wrong and they had to bring in somebody again. So it ended up costing them more money than it probably would have had they just gone out and gotten somebody that was current in everything.
Wow. And I can relate to that, because when we built our Barndo, I remember, I'm thinking like floor joist, right? And my builder comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to hang this LVL." And I'm like, what's an LVL? I'm like, I had no idea, because I had built my house, 25 years prior, right? So I had been inside of, building every day like, these guys are. So great advice. All right, what's our next one? You got another one to share?
Number 2 here. Understand that when you're building this, you're going to have a limited buyer pool. Not everybody wants to live in a barndominium, no matter how much you make it look like it. And I'll put quotes on traditional house, because there's ways to do that. But you're still going to have a limited buyer pool if you're building what most people would consider a barndominium. I mean, call it a 2,000 square foot living space and a 3,000 square foot shop attached. Okay, not everybody wants to live in that. So, understand that what you're building is not going to be a mass market appeal. Just like not everybody wants to live on 2 acres or 5 acres or 50 acres. Not everybody necessarily wants to live in a house with a giant shop attached to it. And again, if your Barndo is going to be Barndo in name only, and it's post frame construction and it looks more like a traditional house, okay, your buyer pool, your niche opens up a little bit more. But just kind of understand that from the beginning, that it is going to be a little bit harder to get rid of it in the long run. And chances are it's not going to be a direct comp and sell dollar for dollar like other houses that are the same square footage, beds, baths, acreage, and stuff like that.
Oh, that makes a ton of sense. And we have actually seen that, even though the barndominium in our markets are so strong and with limited supply, it's not an issue. But I do feel as the markets reach that balancing point that you are giving great advice, because I mean, that would be true not just with any barndominium, but any house, whether it was like a container home or a geodesic or whatever, right? So
that's great. Those are other specific niche products that are just like this. And you're right. The geodesic domes never caught on. Container homes are always going to be more specific niche product. I think barndominiums are going to catch on more and more, especially kind of with the work that you guys are doing and making the knowledge available of what they are and the benefits. But in the meantime, until we get there to where it's, to where it is common, people are like, oh, I like this, it's a good thing. Yeah, we still have a little bit of a barrier to overcome there.
Yeah, perfect. All right. What's next on your list to share?
All right. Third one that I've got here, and this goes a little bit back to number 1. Was it built correctly? There are very, very specific ways. Let's say a lot of people that I'm seeing do Barndos right now are doing spray foam insulation on the inside of them. There's and I'm not a builder, I've just talked to them, very specific ways to apply spray foam insulation so that you have the correct vapor barriers, so that you have the correct airflow behind them, so that you don't end up with metal on the outside rusting through prematurely, so that you don't have metal on the bottom. There's specific clearances on above your slab and things like that. So make sure that when you're dealing with a builder, you're dealing with somebody who builds barndominiums and understands the correct way to do them, and understands that, hey, metal is a fairly durable building product. But if it's done wrong, like if same thing with wood, right? If it's done wrong and you can't get rid of moisture, that wood will rot. Well, if you can't get rid of moisture, that metal will rust. Make sure that your builder understands what he's doing. Make sure that you're asking questions. Hey, how are you preventing the inside of my metal sheathing from rusting? How are you preventing, if I get a roof leak, how are we getting that water out of there? Does it make sense to do closed cell spray foam on the roof, or does it make sense to do something else? Ask those questions of your builder. Make sure they've got an answer, and that answer makes sense and checks out with your research.
Oh, that again, there's a thing I'm going to say here, and that's Mother Nature always wins, right? I mean, you water,
undefeated.
Rust. I mean, mold. I mean, Mother Nature is always going to win. So you've got a big charge, and really, that's where I really, like you said about the education, so important. And again, if you're watching this video right now, folks, this is so important that, you know, obviously Chris is in Texas and he may not be able to help you in your backyard if you're in, you know, Michigan or Kansas, but it is so important to find someone like Chris with this kind of knowledge, because I can guarantee to you that if you go to the average real estate agent, they are not going to have this knowledge base, making a huge difference on what you're going to have for resale on your home. So super, super important. That's my piece of advice to you. You know, having Chris on here, just like listen to somebody like this. This got that kind of knowledge.
And that's a real thing. And like I wouldn't go sell. Heck, I wouldn't sell a Barndominium. I wouldn't sell anything in Michigan because I don't know anything about it. And that's exactly what it is. You know, that's not saying other realtors are necessarily bad, but if they don't have the knowledge, that's the big key.
Yeah, perfect.
And same with lenders. I mean,
yeah, right. We were just talking about
it. That's right. That's right.
Same thing. Like I'm not going to know your particular nuances in Texas, because I can do the general stuff, but I don't know what's common, what's common
right.
practices. So, okay, Chris, so we've given some really good information. Is there anything you've got in the secret bag of tricks that's like super critical that you're going to have to share?
I do. I went back and again drew on some prior knowledge on this, but yeah, I've got 3 more that are pretty, I would say higher level stuff. All right. Number 4 on this is you and your realtor have to understand the market's understanding, the real estate market's understanding of what a barndominium is. John, you mentioned it a little bit ago that general public, general realtors, this is not something that they do on a daily basis. So, in my notes here, what is a barndominium? The general public doesn't understand that. Again, their knowledge of this is, hey, this is a house attached to a giant shop. It looks like a barn, which, John, I know that's not necessarily the case all the time. And so being able and having a realtor that when you do sell this thing, and maybe you're going to be selling one soon, make sure that you've got a realtor who understands what it is. They can I was going to say portray, that they can get that knowledge across to a buyer in a description in their videos, to a buyer's agent. We're humans, and human nature is when we don't understand something, we tend to shrink back from that. And so again, what is the market knowledge of what you're trying to sell? And how do you sell it in a way that they go, oh, that makes sense. Now I understand what this is. This is how a barndominium's built. These are the benefits of doing it that way. This is why I want to buy that. And again, it goes back to starting with that in mind from the beginning of when you build it. Again, if you've already got it existing and you're looking to sell it, okay, you can't start with that in mind. But anyway, now you can start working on that. Okay, how do I get this knowledge across so that people don't see, oh, this is a barndominium. I really don't want to live in a barndominium. I've heard they have water leaks and they're not energy efficient and stuff like that. And they just move right past it without ever thinking. One of the biggest things on this is if you do have a barndominium that looks like a barn, and look, in Texas, that's what people did, because the reason they became so popular in Texas is because they were building a barn. And when the tax people looked at it, it looked like a barn. And so, one of the problems in Texas is we have pretty high property taxes. And so it was a way for people to build a nice house that the tax man didn't know how to assess. And if they didn't know that there was actually living quarters in it, they assessed it as a barn. It was 20% of finished square footage value. Now all of a sudden their tax bill is tiny.
Yeah.
Okay. But if it looks like a barn, your lead picture on an MLS listing had better not be the outside of a barn. You better be showing the view. You better be showing the nice kitchen that you've got, the amazing bathroom that you've put in it, the huge shop that you have. Those are the things that you've got to understand when you're trying to, sell it. And if you're starting from the beginning building it, put your nice kitchen in there. I mean, you're saving money on the construction. That's kind of the point. So go ahead and do those small little upgrades. Put that little fancier quartz inside the kitchen. Take your tile in the bathroom all the way to the ceiling. Put some nice beams in there. Make it look. And here's something that was told to me a long time ago. If you're in love with what you build, there's other people that are going to love it as well. So
Oh,
if you love big exposed, hand hewn beams that you got from an Amish barn somewhere, other people are going to love that too. Go ahead and spend a little extra money and do that, because when you go to sell it in the future and people see that inside, they're not going to care what the outside looks like.
yeah, that is great advice. That is, yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
And again, this one's from personal experience. This was a hard sell. And again, going back to starting from the very beginning, what are you building? And I'll give you the scenario of what this client was. This client was a single man. He was a welder. He had 5 acres that was given to him from his grandfather, and he wanted to build a barndominium on it. And so, and he was young also. He was in his mid-20s. And so he built the structure himself. Fine. He had the knowledge. He built about a 700 square foot, 1 bed, 1 bath with a loft, and 700 square feet was including the loft. And it had about an 8,000 square foot shop on the back of it. And that was his welding shop. It was absolutely perfect for him. Absolutely perfect. But going back to the niche product that a barndominium already is, okay, now take that and narrow that down even more to somebody who's looking for a 1 bed, 1 bath on 5 acres with an 8,000 square foot shop.
Yeah.
You know what the feedback was.
Right.
First of all, it was hard to get people in because nobody's looking for a 1 bedroom. Even if he had closed in the loft and made that a 2nd bedroom, it would have been better off, as a 2-1. But the people that did come through, they were people that were potentially, downsizing, looking for just a place to get out of the city for the weekend and stuff like that. They're like, yeah, I like the 700 square feet, but the 8,000 square feet on the back, I have 0 use for. I've got an RV that I would like to put inside. I've got a little Kubota tractor because I've got 5 acres and I need to mow it and stuff like that. And, I may have a boat, but I've got 8,000 square feet on the backside. So again, make sure you understand what you're starting with, and is that marketable down the road?
Yeah. And to the point, being in lending for 30 years, that is, that's where those appraisals come into issue. That's where banks have problems. Not that it's a barndominium or a house or whatever people want to call it, right? It's the fact that you've got limited marketability because of what you have built, because it's to you and not to the general public. So that is probably the biggest nugget right there that people should pay attention to when building a barndominium. Yeah. So it's okay to make it custom as long as that custom can fit a larger market. If you plan on resell, if you really believe you're going to die in it forever,
that's right.
Well, then it is what it is, right? But if at some point, even for your kids, if it's for your trust or your estate, and keep it in mind for them, if you're, because it is an asset.
That's right. Your kids may want to sell it, like they, we see that all the time, right? Where the parents had the greatest of thoughts in mind, and they were going to give this to their kids, and it's got renters in it, and it's producing cash and everything else. And the kids are like, I don't have time for this. I've got to sell this house.
Yep.
So yeah, keep that in mind for sure.
Perfect.
Don't create something that's too niche. All right. My last one, and this is going to be right up your alley, John. As a seller, when you're going to sell this thing, make sure that you have a lender like John that you can recommend, or an insurance person that you have been using that understands how to lend on a barndominium and how to get insurance on a barndominium. Because I've seen buyers that have fallen out of contract because their lender just couldn't get the deal done. Now that's getting a little bit less common now. Again, more people are more understanding, and not more people are more understanding of this, but the people with the money, the lenders who are actually giving out their money, they understand that barndominium construction is a thing and it's a real thing and there's value there, but that hasn't made it across all lending institutions. Your big banks, Chase, Wells Fargo, those guys, they're not doing it. Your internet lenders are not doing it. So have a lender and an insurance agent that are local. That's the most important thing here. If it's in Michigan, obviously, I don't know which way I'm pointing. If it's in Michigan, obviously it's John and company. But have that so that if your buyer starts running into issues, hey, the agent said that the lender is giving him grief. Okay, no problem. call John. Or better yet, from the beginning, as a realtor, what I like to do is, do you have a lender that's done Barndominium construction? Oh yeah. We have a lender. That's what every agent says. I've got a lender, because every agent has relationships. Right. Well, the next thing out of my mouth is, I need you to call John. I need you to get your buyers pre-approved with John, because if and when your lender can't get this deal done, I don't want it to fall out of escrow. You don't have to use him, but I need you to get pre-approved with him, just so everybody knows we have at least one lender that we can trust to close a Barndominium.
Yeah,
same with insurance.
Again, Chris, that's great advice. And as you know, being in the position that I have for so long, specializing in Barndominium financing, having one my own, my son's finishing one up right now. So we're so involved with the community, and knowing other lenders, like Trey down in Texas, that can get these things done is super critical part of the team. Your builder, your real estate agent, your insurance, all those things. That is another great piece of knowledge. So thank you.
And even if it slows the process down, even if it forces the deal to close 2 weeks later because they've got to regroup and go a different direction with different financing, the buyers and the sellers are typically going to be okay. 99 times out of 100, they're okay extending, because the seller doesn't want to have to start over. The buyer doesn't want to have to start over. The agents don't want to have to start over. So even if you have to extend closing on this thing, that's fine. Open communication with everybody. Hey, we thought this company could get it done. They can't. We've got to go to your guy. Okay, great. Go to him. Let's get it going again.
Perfect. Perfect. Hey, Chris, this has been phenomenal. I know that our members are going to love the information you're sharing. Do you mind sharing your contact information? If someone is in the Dripping Springs area, or even in Texas, they can reach out. Yep. I imagine you'd probably be open to other folks calling as well. But if you are looking for that, that specialty real estate agent in Barndominiums, Chris is going to be there for you. He's got a servant's heart. So if you're okay sharing your contact info, that'd be great.
Absolutely. We can put it up afterwards as well, because I just looked if I can do it in comments, and I'm not smart enough to use the computer here. But my phone number is my cell, 512-736-1703. Again, 512-736-1703. My email address is my name, Chris at drippingSpringsHomeTeam.com. Chris at drippingSpringsHomeTeam.com. And you're right. If you've got questions, even if I can't help you, I'll answer questions. It doesn't matter. You can live in Colorado, and if you want to know something, ask me. If I don't have the answer, I'll find somebody in Colorado who knows the answer for that.
That's beautiful. Did I get that number up there right? Can you see it on the video screen?
It is. That is. Oh, no, you didn't. 1703. Sorry about that.
Let's see if I can get it. Sorry, guys. You know what?
No, and you're good.
Hey,
I've got.
Don't call that number. Somebody's gonna be calling for Barndominium. All right, we'll get it. We will get it put out there and make sure that we've got all this streaming information so people can call you. So that's my bad. But Chris,
and John, I'm gonna one more little thing, and this is for people in Texas. I don't know Michigan rules on this. I know a couple of other states don't allow this yet, guys. One thing that I personally have on my home, I don't live in a Barndominium, but I do live in a home with a metal roof. And we're on acreage where we had an option of digging a well or putting in rainwater collection. Do not be worried about rainwater collection. I've been living here for 7 years. It's in Texas. We've just gone through one of the most the worst droughts in my 49 years. Dad always talks about the drought of 57. It was worse, but in 49 years I've been on this earth, we haven't had a worse drought than what we just went through. And rainwater, like a champ, perfect water, metal roof, it comes off. There's cleaners, there's filters and stuff like that. And it is way better than the water that people are pulling out of the ground here that's got all the calcium carbonate and salt and everything else in it. Don't sleep on rainwater, especially if you're in Texas. If you're not in Texas, look at your state rules and find out, because I personally think it's amazing. We've got about 29,000 gallons of capacity. I do not have a yard, but I live in the country. I don't want a yard. There you go. That's that last little tidbit. Don't be afraid of rainwater.
Yeah, piece of information I didn't even know. But before we close it out, as a lender, I got to ask, any problems with financing them?
When we did it 8 years ago, we had to make sure Trey was our lender. You'll meet Trey. I think John's got some plans to potentially bring him on and talk to him. But you're going to need again, Wells Fargo and Chase were not doing the lending on it back then. Smaller lenders were, and there were no issues whatsoever. And now they're starting to become popular enough that, again, Wells Fargo, Chase are still not doing it, but most of the smaller, more boutique lenders are doing it without any issue whatsoever.
That's great. That's gret. And the other thing as we close out, Chris, the other thing I love about that is that we've got a guest that will be coming on as an expert as a panelist that is going to talk and share about homesteading and, natural food, rainwater collection, like you said, avoiding the chemicals that are in the ground. What another great thing. So that's how we're going to wrap it up. More great stuff.
Perfect.
We appreciate it, Chris. Thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely, John. Thank you, guys. And again, if you don't have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you. Take care.